Hey, friends, welcome to the Kevin Dairaghi Show. Thanks for being with us today. Today, we're going to talk with Paul Myers from Augusta, Georgia. But before we break in there, I just want to say thanks to our vendors. Lois Mann's Farmers Insurance. She does all of our insurance, right? She's fantastic with our vacants, with our rentals, all that stuff. We have Jason Hudson with Red Maples Construction. They're the ones doing all the work, putting it together. Actually, their prices are great. Their timelines are even better. And without them, I really just couldn't be buying as many houses as I do. I want to say thank you to Greg Mans with Upright Construction. If you're going to do it upright. So he does our roofs and sidings and windows and all that fun stuff on the outside of the houses, where Jason does the inside. And also special thanks to Complete Realty Services, CRS. That is Adam Droege and his property management team. Recently, he was actually just on our panel of property managers. Freaking amazing. He is crushing it with what he's doing and helping other property managers excel as well. So thank you to Adam and all the vendors that we have here. So today we talk with Paul Myers. So Paul is getting into like hundreds of houses, right? So he is wholesaling, he is wholetailing, he's doing all this stuff. Crazy health journey as he finally went out and started his own company, brought it out there. Honestly, you just got to hear it. But he gives us some great advice, talks about board of advisors, and probably the most regarded as the entry into real estate, Rich Dad Poor Dad, the book. So yeah, let's get into our conversation with Paul. All right, and today our special guest, all the way from Augusta, Georgia, our friend Paul Myers. Paul, how you doing?
What's going on, Kevin? Thank you so much for having me. It's good to see you and get to spend some time together.
Yeah, it looks like a great day there in Georgia. It's actually
Yeah,
not miserable here in St. Louis, so that's nice.
yeah,
So, Paul, you are in like masterminds. We've both been a guest of some of the Deal Machine podcasts that's out there. You're part of a group called Collective Genius, and I think the entry there is you have to do what 100 houses a year is like low entry or something.
yeah. They've got four different tiers now,
Oh,
but I think it's like maybe 25 to 50 or 50 to 100. I don't know. Anyway, they have Elevate, Select, Premier, and then CEO. So
okay.
I'm
So some of
currently
that has
at Select.
evolved since we were looking at it, but
Yeah,
so collective genius means like you had to be, you're doing it, right? You're out
yeah,
there, you're
definitely.
producing, and you've created a pretty good machine out there in Georgia. So all that said, we'll get into all that looks like, but how did you and why did you get into real estate, Paul?
Wow. Well, it all starts with my granddad. So when I was a sophomore at the University of Georgia, this was 2004, Christmas break, my parents and my family, we get into the car and we head up to Highlands, North Carolina to go to the mountains where we always like to spend Christmas. My dad had four brothers and a sister. And on that drive up there, we stopped by my grandparents' house, and they lived in Seneca, South Carolina, just outside of Clemson. And we pull in their house, and my granddad was always the grandparent that I got along with the best, and just took a liking to, and he took a liking to me. And he had this purple and yellow book on his bookshelf that caught my eye, and it was called Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I said, well, Granddad, I just read the sleeve of the book, and I thought, man, this is interesting. What the rich teach their kids about money that the poor and middle class don't. I'm like, man, this sounds pretty interesting to me. And I was a sophomore at UGA, living in Vauxhall, thinking about getting into the Terry College of Business and what the future might hold for me. And I go to take the book, and my granddad's like, oh, no, you can't have that book. And I'm like, why not? I'll borrow it. I'll bring it back. He said, you can only have it and borrow it if you promise me that you'll read it. And I was like, well, yeah, that's why I'm taking the book. But little did I know that was his upfront contract with me to basically say, you better read it. This isn't for kicks and giggles. This is a really serious book, and it could change your life. And so we get back in the car, we get up on the mountain passes up to Cashers and Highlands, North Carolina, and I couldn't even put the book down. I was getting sick. I just couldn't put it down. And it was just one of those books, story format. It's got a little bit of fable in there. Is it true? Is it made up story? But that book left a lasting impression on me, and it caused me to basically declare, I drew a line in the sand that day. And that line in the sand was, I'm going to commit to real estate as I always called it my asset class of choice. And I'm going to commit to it for the rest of my life. And, that's going to be my specialty. And we'll see how it plays out. But, win or lose, come hell or high water, I'm going with real estate, and I'm going to niche down into that. So that's how I found real estate.
Oh, that is awesome. And what a great tie to your granddad there.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That was what you said in college, you said?
Yeah, that was the Christmas break of 2004. So I was a sophomore at UGA.
That's awesome. So then how did you start applying it?
Well, the recession, so I graduated college in May of 2007, and the recession was about to come in, and I'd gotten engaged my senior year of college to my now wife of 18 years, Shannon.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And so I didn't know, what I was going to do. A funny story, my father-in-law, when I went to ask for my wife's hand in marriage, he was like, yeah, you don't have a job lined up yet, do you? Like 6 months from now when you graduate from college? And I was like, no, I don't. But I'm going to graduate with a degree in business management from Terry College of Business. I'm a hard worker, and I plan on, getting one. He's like, well, I don't know that you should propose yet. I think that might be getting the cart ahead of the horse a little bit. And a few months later, we were engaged. So the pressure was really on. I painted myself into a corner. But anyway, I got a job, long story short, as a branch manager for Wachovia at the time. Then eventually the recession hit, and it became Wells Fargo. And what I ultimately decided to do was like, I'm going to have this job. I got this W-2 job. My wife's going through postgraduate school. She wanted to go to medical school. And so I basically was like, well, we're taking on loans for that, and I got to cover our living expenses. But I think I can eke out just enough of a debt to income ratio where I can buy a rental property. And so that's what I did. October of 2007, I bought my first rental property here in Augusta. And then the recession just crashed, and Bear Stearns went belly up. And then in April and May of 2009, I bought my second and third rentals. And that started me on like basically a 12-year timeline of corporate America, where I was kind of buying rentals on the side, working my W-2 job, and then working with my wife to use our discretionary income.
Way to go. So like a 12-year kind of a runway there.
Yeah, I did 4 years in banking, 5 years in B2B sales, 2 years leasing enclosed shopping malls as a commercial real estate agent. And then my final 2 years, I worked in a commercial brokerage as an internal sales leader, and then also as a producing commercial agent. So all total in corporate America is 13 years. And then at that point, I had, a few handfuls of rentals, and I basically was like, I think I want to do real estate investing full time. I want to start my own firm. And that's when I launched my current company 5 years ago, which is called Myers House.
Nice. Did that feel pretty good?
Not the first 5 months when we didn't make any income. Right? Isn't that the story of every entrepreneur? Yeah, the first 5 months we couldn't get a deal to save our lives. So it was hard. It was hard off the get-go. But by that time, my wife and I had 4 kids. I had some rental properties that were generating passive income for me. And by God's grace and generosity, I had built a multi-million-dollar net worth and was doing fairly well there. But I wanted to really start up a company from scratch and start a journey of solopreneurship initially, and then entrepreneurship and small business ownership. I didn't have that in my family. My family were all dentists.
Oh, really?
So yeah, it took a little while, but finally we got the first deal done and started doing more deals, and was able to show my granddad that his investment in me and his willingness to lend me that book was something that paid off.
Did he give him back the book, or?
No, I kept it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that doesn't sound like it went back.
I've got it right over here on my bookshelf. It's got an autograph now, and it's been my original copy.
That's awesome. Did you at least replace it? Like, did he send him a copy? Like, yeah.
No, he was doing pretty good. He was in his late 80s. He never got into real estate, but he was a multimillionaire and was good with money and a faithful steward and a prudent investor.
Oh, that's good. What a good mentor there. Did you have any other like coaches or mentors early on?
Oh gosh, yeah. I've always had coaches and mentors to this day. My next mentor after my granddad was a gentleman named Sandy. And he and I just ran into each other. It was totally a God ordained run in that just proves how sovereign God is. My wife's laptop charger had shorted out and she was in medical school. And I was like, well, I better run to Best Buy to get my wife a laptop charger here. That would be what a good newlywed husband should do, right?
Oh man.
So I run into Best Buy and I'm right when I'm walking in, the guy walks in ahead of me and he's carrying this big bushel of Rich Dad CDs. And I had been to like the weekend seminar where they try and upsell you, from the like $300 thing to the $1,000 thing to the $30,000 Rich Dad education. So I saw what that bundle of CDs looked like, and this guy had them. And he walked into Best Buy in front of me, and I was like, oh, this guy, man. I gotta know this guy because this is a guy clearly this is a guy who spent like $30,000-$40,000 on his real estate investing education, and he looked like he was in his like mid 50s or so. And so I went up to him. I was like, "Hey, man, I'm really interested in like Rich Dad Poor Dad. I've read the book. Like my granddad gave it to me. My granddad's a multimillionaire, and everything I've read in the book, I've asked my dad about, and he says it's all true. Even though my dad's not really into investing, I was like, but like, you tell me about your story. He's like, no, dude, like I'm just here to buy a laptop and make sure it's compatible with these CDs. He's like, I don't have time to talk with you, but you can come down to my shop at 6 a.m. on Tuesday morning and, you can interview me then. I said, okay, great. I'd love to interview you. And that was my in, right? It was like, I'm going to interview you. Kind of like today's podcast, right? Like what we're doing. Because everyone loves to talk about themselves, right? And so Sandy agreed to meet with me that morning. And little did I know he was decades and decades ahead of me, but he was the perfect guy that God had brought into my life to teach me, about getting started as a buy and hold landlord, how to build wealth, not make money today, but like to build wealth like 15, 20 years from now. Long story short, my wife was really generous in allowing me to drive. Sandy lived like 10 minutes from my house. Wow. So I would get done as a branch manager, and we didn't have any children for our first 4 years of marriage. So I would drive over to Sandy's house, get in his big white Suburban. He towed a big trailer behind it with all these like PVC plumbing parts and different, things. And he did his own maintenance. And I'm not going to tell you how many homes he owned, but it was a massive amount of rental properties in good areas too, like the best zip codes in our market. Oh, wow. So long story short, I spent 2 years working for free for him at night. And just while we were driving around, I would just ask him questions. How did you buy this home? How did you buy that home? What is this rent for? And then I was able to model my portfolio in the same subdivisions as his homes. Oh, wow. So yeah, he became my mentor for probably 10 plus years. And mentorship looks different, over time. Now I have a board of advisors that meets in my company once a quarter and I have a coach now. And so mentorship looks different in different
all right, Paul, tell me about this board of advisors.
Yeah. I was a first generation business owner when I started Myers House Buyers. Quite naturally, there's going to be some things you don't see coming around the corner and mistakes that you're going to be prone to make. I read Keith Cunningham's book. It's called The Road Less Stupid. I was looking for it on my bookshelf, but I don't see it. And after I read that book, I was like, man, he mentioned board of advisors in there. I probably should build one. I've always been a guy that values relationships and just like maintaining contact with people and trying to have a spirit of intellectual humility and acknowledge that I don't know everything. And so I went to 6 different men and I asked them if they would come to my office once a quarter all together for 2 hours on a volunteer basis and share their wisdom with me. And in return, I would basically build out a presentation. I would share 3 things: our financials, our personnel, and our strategic direction. And as long as I prepared a sharp, on-point presentation and I shared that with them, I would invite them in to critique me and give me constructive feedback on how I could improve and mistakes to avoid, right, as a first-generation business owner. And 4 of these 6 men were third-generation business owners. I forgot to tell you that.
Oh, wow.
So, like, really wise people. And in short, I was able to get a bunch of them to say yes and more of them to say yes. And then we launched the board of advisors several years ago. And I think it's been a critical reason for our ability to have some success.
So you had three things: financials, personal. What was the third one?
Personnel. So like the human resources component, because people is just so important.
Right.
What we do.
Well, you said financials, personnel. What was the third one?
The third thing is strategic objectives, like strategic direction. So if you think about like the book Traction, if you read that book by Gino Wickman, he talks about having a veto, a vision and traction organizer, and then having quarterly rocks. So I share with this group my quarterly rocks for our entire team. And then they get to chew me up and spit me out and give me any feedback they want. I tell them to take off, basically don't sugarcoat anything, hit me with it straight up. And then what they tell me to do, because they're volunteering their time for free, I have to do it. Otherwise, they're not going to come back.
Oh, that's awesome.
So basically, there's pressure on me, and I implement probably 90 to 95% of the things that they recommend to me, I implement. Because can you imagine if you were volunteering your time on a board and the chairman or they basically disregarded your advice, you'd stop serving immediately.
Yeah. Thanks anyway. Don't you? So have you ever got into coaching yourself where you coach?
Yeah, I've done some coaching around. One of my niches in the world has been building relationships with agents on a community-wide level. And so, yeah, I've enjoyed that.
So I coach, and so when you give advice, or especially the people who come and ask for advice, and you give this, you spend the time, you really pour into them, and then they don't do any of the things that, and you're just like, and then they're like, oh man, I'm having the same problem. It's like, we talked, you didn't do it.
Right. Yeah.
So it's either Dawn Baumgartner or someone else who was on this. Part of her thing is, hey, you could come in, I'll give you really good advice and direction, but you don't get a call again if you don't do what the homework was the first, like, you don't get to call me up again. You got to finish it up before you could come back. It's like, oh, yeah, kind of like that style. What's funny, you bring up board of advisors. We're implementing this right now. Like, I came up with the idea of 3 just so there's an odd number. Yeah. And I have 2. I don't have my third one picked yet. But it is one of those, as an entrepreneur, there's really not too many people that hold you accountable.
Right.
And it's like, okay, like I need to, if I'm really going to take this up to like CEO level, I need to be kind of a little bit more higher level responsible on this stuff.
Right. Yeah. You don't know what you don't know. And you got other people that have been business owners for several decades. I mean, I've got guys that started their business. I've got my real estate closing attorney. He started his firm at McLeod Attorneys at Law in 2001. 24 years later, he's still successful. He has like 6 attorneys that work for him, a huge staff, dozens of employees, and that's just one. So there's my board of advisors have lent me money. Some of them are my private money lenders now. They've started doing business with each other, which has been really cool to see how God has brought that about. Some of them own rental portfolios. But anyway, it's just been a massive opportunity for me to learn from.
I love it. Love the idea. And I would strongly recommend, even if you're starting, think of it like that. I mean, it's great to have a coach. It's great to have a role model. But it's also nice to make sure that you're answering to somebody else too. Like, like, how do you work well with your wife on this stuff? Does she work in the business with you?
She really doesn't. She helped me in the very beginning stages back when we were first buying rentals with some of the terms like cleaning and different things. And then she had her own professional career, 4 years of med school, 3 years of pediatric residency, and then practiced for 6 years. And then we were having children along that time. And so we decided, when I launched Myers House Buyers in November of 2020, almost 5 years ago, she had a small pediatric practice that we decided to close, and she became a stay-at-home mom at that point. It has been one ever since. And we have 4 children, one in high school, one in middle school, one in elementary school, and one that's in a Mother's Day Out program. So
man,
our carpool has gotten more complex than it's ever been this year. But we're making it happen. We had to hire a house manager, but we're making it happen.
Oh, that's awesome. So last year we had 3 kids. No, 2 years ago we had 3 kids in 3 different schools. So probably just what you were talking about, and none of them drove, which means
that's right.
We had to bring them all to different places at different times. Now 2 are in high school. They drive themselves there, and the other is in middle school, and it's a carpool. So like we actually got back from that year to this year an hour and a half every day because we're not shuttling all the kids. Imagine that, like
Yeah,
that's a lot of time that just gets sucked out of your prime time there.
I know. And
On the other
I
side
don't,
is I got a freaking senior, and it's like,
yeah, yeah. No, I wish we could just let them ride the bus. I mean, that's what I did as a kid. You could go to public
yeah,
schools, man. You
I
got to
don't
ride the
know why
bus.
that's
But
not really an option here.
my wife really loves that quality time in the van and just an opportunity to hear them talk and listen what happened in their day, and then pray with them on the way to school, give them some spiritual encouragement. So I get it. So yeah, all that to say, answer your question. My wife's not really involved in Myers house buyers. She helped us with a couple flips and was very helpful from an interior design perspective and a landscaping perspective the first couple years, but you know, she really doesn't do that anymore. She's pretty much 100% hands off.
That quality time that you just brought up, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Like, do your kids play sports?
Yeah. We've got them in a bunch of different sports. We've got some limits on travel sports, but yeah, they're involved.
Kind of what you're saying. Like, sometimes that early morning drive or the late evening and you're driving home and they're tired, sometimes they'll tell you everything going in their lives, and you're like,
Right.
you have that 15, 30 minutes of time. Like, man, that's gold.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we try and have family devotions in the morning at 6:30. We try and do, we call it prayer and Proverbs. Prayer is we just each got to keep it real short, but like we do the ACTS model where you say ACTS is an acronym ACTS, adoration, confession, thanksgiving, and supplication. So one thing you adore about God, one thing that you confess, a sin that you confess, one thing you're thankful for, and then one thing you want to ask God for or supplicate God for. And then we read the proverb of the month, right? It's August 25th. Hey, we're going to read Proverbs 25. But that sometimes kids sleep in, sometimes it gets missed. Sometimes Shannon and I just are not consistent as adults in being the spiritual leaders that we should be and that God's called us to be. And so that little Shannon taking them to school, that can generate those additional conversations and help our kids be mindful of, the fringe kids, the kids that are not popular, and those are all over the place in public schools. How do you be intentional to reach out and befriend those and sit with them at the lunch table and make sure that you're being Christ to those students?
Great leadership already looking at the kids with that. I mean, we've been pretty fortunate. Our kids actually care about other people.
Yeah.
And it's so as they get older, like I'll hire some of the kids and their friends to help me clean out a house or we'll paint or, like a make ready. Because
Sure.
I mean, I spent 10 years as a GC, so I get to help them learn, hey, this is how you do this, this, this. Like, hey, this quality is okay, this isn't. And I have to admit, like, part of it is like, Paul, I'm not going to do all the work. I'm not going to hover over your shoulder. Here's the broad strokes of what we're doing. Like, this is how you do it. Here's the tools. You're going to figure it out. Like, you need to figure out the best way it works. Here's some helpful hints that I found. But because part of it is like, if I just keep telling you the answers over your shoulder, it's going to help a little bit. But until you do it and just jump, you're going to mess up. I get it.
Yeah.
You're going to mess up.
Right.
But better do it now on a rental than on one of the expensive things, Yeah. It's like, we have some room on this one. It's okay if there's a couple paint drops or, for most of it, we could fix anything that's broken. So,
yeah.
But that's where it's like, dude, first you try to figure it out. Maybe bring over your buddy and you guys try to figure it out. If you can't after a while, then you ask me, if it's something serious, like you're playing with electric, don't ask me. Right. But it's one of those, like, I do want you to figure it out a little bit on your own before you just, call in the help. I'll tell you, I like that you brought up the Proverbs. I've been telling people there's Proverbs for every day. And I'm a big fan of, today's the 25th. You read the 25th. It's great. You read the 26th. There's so much wisdom that comes out of that book. We have a bunch of other guests that talk about loving the Stoicism, like they like Marcus Aurelius and other Stoics. And I'm like, man, I feel like I get that from Proverbs. It's like just straight up wisdom. And every once in a while you'll be doing something and it just chimes in like, nope, don't do that. Do this. Like, it's just one of those, like, it's kind of good to have those quick little tips.
Absolutely.
Man,
God's wisdom for our daily life, what a blessing.
It's so practical. All right, so Paul, we're talking about all good things now. Let's turn around because is it always rainbows and butterflies in beachfront vacation homes?
No.
There's
No, yeah.
there's another
You
part to this.
yeah, you kind of heard when I started November 2020, I mean 5 months to get our first deal. That was a brutal challenge. But the biggest challenge that I've been that I've been through that I've shared on some other podcasts is, you know, right about that time, so March, April, it was really March, April of 2021, I went in and had an annual checkup with a cardiologist, and he was like, hey, you need to start interviewing CT surgeons. And I was like, what?
What?
What does that mean? And he's like, well, your aortic root has enlarged to 4.5 centimeters, and that's the point where most heart surgeons would recommend that you have open heart surgery. And I was like, no way. I've been getting echocardiograms like for 15 years, and the diameter hasn't changed on my aorta. But that was a major turning point in my business because I was just trying to get everything off the ground. Like I had one or two team members at the time. It was I had no SOPs, right? Like there was nothing. It was really just an idea. But yeah, so sure enough, 4 months later, August 10th, 2021, I had my first open heart surgery. And so it's a very brutal surgery. I had to have several things done that were just hereditary problems that finally precipitated me having to have surgery.
So how old are you at this point?
Today I'm 40. So that was,
So
I
you're
think
just
I'm
in your late
36.
30s.
Yeah, 36.
Gee.
So yeah, I flew up to Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, Ohio. They were the highest volume center in the world, and so I went up there and had surgery. I had my ascending aorta completely replaced, and then I had my aortic root remodeled. They spared my root. It's ridiculously complex. I don't understand it. Even my second heart surgeon, not to spoiler alert, but he couldn't even describe after he went into my chest the second night. He couldn't even describe to me the remodeling that they did of my root. But the simplest way I can describe it is you have a valve, right? And the valve is opening and closing like this. And I had part of my valve was not closing well. And so we had regurgitation into my left ventricle, which is pumping the blood to the rest of your body. And it has to now overcompensate for that because blood's coming back in. It's having to work even harder. So yeah, violent surgery. They do an incision, kind of see the top
Oh
of the scar
yeah.
right there in my chest. I'll spare your viewers taking my shirt off, but the scar goes from here down to about right here, and they do an incision. Then they use a bone saw to cut the sternum bone in half. They pull it about 6 inches apart. They put clamps in. They go in. They do the operation. You're on a heart and lung machine the whole time, and then they close the chest and they do steel ties to hold your sternum together, which stay in your body for life. And then they do stitches on the incision. And so, yeah, intensive care afterwards for a week. I mean, a step down unit for another week. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. So I'm like away from my family and my friends, my church, my support system is all in Augusta, Georgia. I mean,
Yeah, and your wife is probably home with all the kids.
her mom came, so she came up with me the whole time, which
Oh
was great.
wow.
And my parents came up and visited me too. That was wonderful. But yeah, I mean, probably the lowest point of my life, definitely the most difficult thing I've ever been through. And then I'm trying to like this. You go through brain fog and you're on oxycodone, right? That's a painkiller. So you're on some oxycodone. They prescribe that to you. It's optional if you want to take it, but you're in a lot of pain. So you're taking some of that, and you can't run a business. You can't make good decisions. You can't underwrite homes. So I just have to rely on God. And then the one or two team members I had at the time. And then if that wasn't enough, a couple months later, I go in, I get an echocardiogram as a checkup. Turns out the whole operation, the ascending aorta needed to be replaced, but the whole root remodeling they did to try and spare my root so that I wouldn't have to go on Coumadin for a lifetime as a blood thinner. But the whole operation, I still had leakage right back into my left ventricle.
Oh no.
And so you want to talk about being angry at God. That was the angriest I've ever been and the most disappointed I've ever been, because I knew in that moment that I was going to have to climb that hill again and go through another open heart surgery, another sternotomy, another week in the intensive care unit, another week in the step-down unit, another 2 months of cardiac rehabilitation in a hospital setting. But, through all that, God was faithful and he spared my life, which I'm grateful for because I have a wife of 18 years and 4 kids, and I'm only 40 years old. God really showed me that he wants me to trust him at a whole nother level, and which includes my health. I never had to trust God with my health before. I've always been a healthy and athletic person, and I've always prioritized physical fitness. But this was a different thing. And the second thing I think he showed me was just that he's not done with me. He has a purpose for me. He wants me to continue to impact lives, build his kingdom, lead, serve. And so I'm on that journey. So God definitely used it, and I'm grateful to be on the other side of it.
Man, I love it. So in this case, I'm going to ask a question because I think I have the answer already. But this year we did an episode called Eads Bridge. Eads Bridge, if you're familiar, is a bridge here in St. Louis. Really?
No.
All right. Well, we have it. Next time you're in St. Louis, I'll take you. But so it was like the first major bridge, so post-Civil War. We've been talking about manifest destiny, connecting East and West, all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Mississippi River is over a mile wide, fast currents, steamships going up and down, like all this stuff.
Yeah.
But there was no really a big bridge in this area to bring a train over. And this is like the Gilded Age. Everybody's building trains, but really they'd bring a train, take everything off, take ferry boats, and then started it. It just wasn't. It wasn't good, right? It wasn't doing its job. So at the time, building material was stones, wood, and iron. And those materials just couldn't do it, right? Because it had to be so tall for the steamships.
Right.
It had to be, a sandy bottom in the river. Long story short, right, which we have a book coming out about it, but it's 3 points: dream, forge, finish. You had to have that vision. You need to dream about what it is you wanted, right? We want to connect East and West.
Sure.
Forge, which is kind of the point that I'm bringing up here, is the building materials just couldn't do it. It wasn't strong enough. Right. So just kind of where you are now, Myers home buyers, right? You couldn't have done that years earlier, you had to devolve in leadership and other characteristics, right? Character, right? Really just develop character. And part of that is what needed to happen is iron needed to turn to steel. And the way you do that is you need heat, you need pressure, you need additives to make you better, and you need to take out impurities, bad things, right? Using entrepreneur words, building healthy habits, stop doing the bad things, right? It's really, the self-defeating habits that we also have. And then finish. You got to finish a bridge because a half-finished bridge doesn't get you across the river, right? A lot of us have good intentions, but until you finish that bridge, I almost finished that marketing campaign. Well, that marketing campaign isn't going to get you any money until you hit go. You have to do it. It could be wrong. There could be typos. Fantastic. Actually, there's more responses when there are typos.
Yeah.
So it is kind of funny how some of this stuff works. All that said and done is we're asking what would be, some of your forging moments. And it sounds like that's a huge one.
Yeah, it really was. Again, like I said, to really have to trust God at a deeper level with my personal health was really challenging. I mean, I slept in a recliner for a month. You can barely walk after the surgery. You have to use a walker. I had to use a walker for like a week. Yeah, it was challenging to even just walk from one side of the room to the other. But little by little, my lungs, which had shrunk during the surgery when they're on the machine, they just start expanding again, and you start gaining back your capacity to breathe deeply. And
stuff you take for granted until it's not there.
That's right. So I'm thankful that God took me through it, and I'm also thankful to be on the other side.
It's do you remember in Psalms, right? They talk about walking through the valley of death, your rod and your staff comfort me. And then later, you're hanging out in the green pastures, over by the stream, the creek, and you're just kind of, it's nice. I use that. I liken that a lot to like our journey, right? We go through those forging moments. It sucks, but that also is happening for us, not to us, right? So then when we are in the green pastures and we've rested up, it's our job to also to help guide those people through the journey. right? As
That's
long
right.
as they keep moving, you're okay. If you stop and you just stop, well, then you never get to the other side, you
Right.
know. And
Right.
that's kind of what you're talking about, the servant leadership, right? Lead and serve. It's to also, hey guys, like rest stop 5 miles, keep going, man. Like it's that
Hmm.
idea of like we become cheerleaders to the other people,
Yeah.
and to know that, hate to say it, you're not unique in some of your struggles. We all have this in businesses.
Right.
And it's really beneficial to be able to pour into someone else's life, and be that board of advisors or that word of,
Yeah.
good advice or something at the time that's needed. Dude,
Yeah. I've been surprised. God's brought people into my life. I mean, it's one thing to go through open heart surgery one time, but to have to go through it twice, it definitely is a unique. I don't understand fully. Let me confess right now. I don't understand fully why God had me go through it, and I'll know that when I get to heaven, He'll help me understand it further then. But obviously, He gives us little glimpses in His grace, in His omniscience. He reveals little things. I have had an opportunity to sit with and answer questions of, and pray with many people that are going through the similar surgeries, similar open heart surgeries in person and over Zoom. And I think God's just equipped me because I've been through it multiple times. I can answer a lot of questions, and people definitely have a lot of questions when they're going through something like this. And so, if nothing else, I think it gives me an opportunity to encourage, and to serve others by answering their questions, and have a positive impact on them for Christ.
man, awesome, Paul. Some of it, I'm kind of like, did I miss something, God? Why are you giving me the same test? Like, I thought we got through this one.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. Like I said, I've never been more disappointed or frustrated with God. I just, I'll never forget the moment when I kind of knew that, because again, it was like a month after my surgery. So we're talking like September, October, November, December, somewhere in there of 2021. Knew I didn't have any symptoms, but I got the echocardiogram and they were like, hey man, your valve's still leaking. But nobody told me that I was for sure going to have another open heart surgery. But then I'll never forget, I was in this church I go to, this First Presbyterian Church of Augusta. And I was down in the middle aisle on the left side, like 6 rows back, and the service had ended, and this guy, his name was Mike, his name was Dr. Mike Watts. He came from the front right of and he was a cardiologist. He was a CT surgeon, excuse me, not just a cardiologist. And he had been an elder, and he was an elder in our church, and he had kind of been like a counselor for me. He prayed with Shannon and me before the surgery. We asked a lot of questions. My wife's a physician, so she's got a lot of questions too. But he came over to me and I told him, it sounds like the operation failed. I still got regurgitation and leakage back into my left ventricle, and he basically told me, he's like, it was so matter of fact for him. He was like, oh, well, this just means that the valve that you tried to have spared, you're now going to have replaced with a mechanical valve. And I basically realized that what he was saying, he was giving me the second opinion. And I knew at that point I was going to have another open heart surgery. And I just collapsed. I was weeping. Yeah. Ugly cry is the phrase. It was all out ugly cry in the pew. I mean, there were probably like 24 people in the sanctuary. People were starting to look over at me with like bewilderment and confusion. Mike Watts was standing over me. I had collapsed into the pew onto the cushion, and I was just like, it's like, it must have been how like David felt after he had the affair with Bathsheba, like just complete crushing of spirit. Psalm 51, the darkness has surrounded me. I'm walking through the valley of shadow of death. I've been through it once. Now I have to go back through the valley of shadow of death again. And it was all I could do to and I remember I got out of the church. I started walking through the courtyard and I saw 2 other people that I knew, and I just collapsed into their shoulders and just wept in their arms. It was just that moment of, wow, like God is calling me to go through this again. How can I ever reconcile that with him being my loving? But time goes on and you realize that God's ways are not our ways. His ways are higher than our ways, infinitely higher, as a matter of fact. Just have to trust him.
Damn.
I trust him.
Paul, that's in a crazy story. You know that, right?
Yeah.
And that was right at the beginning of your now company
Yeah,
when your
yeah, trying
leadership
to,
was needed the most.
yeah,
Now,
it
just
was.
to kind of shine this on as this is going on, that's big. You're knocked out. You're mentally somewhere else, right? But that said, your company is still here and thriving. So, and you
Yeah,
said you had a team. Did those team members really step up and run with it while you were?
yeah, yeah. I had one team member, Zach, he's with me to this day. He's been with me pretty close to the beginning. So over 4 years now. August 1st was his 4 year anniversary at the beginning of this month. But yeah, he stepped up big time. He was my home buying specialist. So he helped make sure that we were capitalizing on our leads, going on appointments, making offers, getting signed agreements. And that was huge. So I'm forever indebted to him for that. And then just, I don't even know how I survived it all. I mean, I had friends and family and church members and encouragement, and I had Marco Polo, so in Slack, so there was some communication there over apps from Ohio. And then my second surgery was in Atlanta, Georgia, in Emory Hospital. So I just tried to kind of not make any key decisions, and just rely on them. And yeah, to this day, as it stands, we've bought and sold hundreds of homes. We've done in 5 years roughly $5 million in top line gross revenue or gross profit. We have a phenomenal team of 7 people. I have an executive assistant and marketing leader. I have a lead manager. Our marketing budget, by the way, is $200,000 a year, which is amazing. I can't believe we've gotten to that point. We have a lead manager that's U.S. based, a great person. I have 2 home buying specialists, including Zach. I have a dispositions manager actively recruiting and hiring a project manager to run fix and flips now. I'm actively involved in the business to the degree that I want to be. And yeah, so we've got a full team. We have the best team we've ever had. The capacity and talent is there. Everyone aligns with our mission statement, which is becoming faithful stewards by creating win-win solutions for the glory of God. Everyone aligns with our core values, which is hunger, humility, and people smarts. And we're on pace this year. We're up 60%. So we're on pace to have our best year ever this year. So yeah, God's been faithful.
Man,
And we're grateful for all of his generosity.
it is great, Paul, to hear that you can be a servant leader and do well in business, because I hate it when people are like, well, business is business and this is personal. It's like, no, man. Like, if you're truly in this walk, you walk it all the time, right?
Yeah.
You don't take off the badge when it's time to do something dirty. No, like you're
Yeah.
still in position,
Right.
that's
We had our weekly team meeting this morning every Monday from 9 to 10 a.m. and we open it the same way as we always do, which is everyone goes around and says something they're grateful for, and that is an embodiment. It's obedience to the command that God gives us in 1 Thessalonians 5:16 to 18, where he says, "Be joyful always, pray continually, and give thanks in all circumstances." So we practice gratitude, and then we open in prayer, and we pray. And I prayed this morning. I said, God, help us work heartily unto you, for it is the Lord Christ whom we serve. So we're always going to be a faith-based company because God has given us everything we have and we owe it all to him. And we're going to give him all the glory, and that's how it's always going to be. And if we fail, then he meant for that to happen, and we'll take that in stride and we'll praise him till the end. And that is how we're going to go down swinging.
Oh, I love it. I do it in our like key meetings or in our masterminds. And I call it first things first. Hey, we have a lot to talk about. I love it, but hey, let's just give it to God, make sure he's here to bless it. And then cool. It's like just one of those things. First things first. Man, just like that, we're flying through this, aren't we?
Absolutely.
So I do have a couple like as we're leaving type questions here. So one,
Sure.
boy, I really like your forging moment there. The health crisis, right? The double heart surgery, right? Well, I don't like it, but I mean it's a very unique story.
Yeah.
But if you could go back and give advice, right, to maybe you going through that part, or maybe a younger version of you through some of the hiccups, or I mean that sounds like crying out to God, really asking for help, right?
Mm-hmm.
Questioning it, but like what advice would you be able to give yourself that would have helped, or like a young entrepreneur going through this and having their own personal health journeys as their business is starting? Like what kind of advice would you give?
I'd probably say just don't prejudge anything. Like it's easy to prejudge and say, I don't need to go through this. God's abandoned me. But hold the horses, like we really don't know what God is up to. Again, his ways are not our ways. His ways are higher. He's omniscient. He's omnipotent. He's omnipresent. He's sovereign. Romans 8:28, right? He knows everything is going to work out for the good of those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. And so we don't need to prejudge situations. It's better that we just be patient and give God time to reveal his purposes. And then whether that takes 1 month, 1 year, or a lifetime, God is looking for our heart. He wants our heart. He wants us to trust in him. He wants us to throw our bodies recklessly on him and in reckless abandon, be wholly devoted to him. So give God time and space to reveal why he's having you go through these things. And I can guarantee you, as a loving Heavenly Father, he will do that in his perfect timing and in his perfect ways. And in the meantime, may we grow in our hope and faith and trust in him.
Good. And then last, when you're going through, maybe not something as big as what you're going through, right? But on those dark days or those micro, like little forging moments we go through weekly, monthly, etc. Is there a quote? Is there a poem? Is there a song? Is there a proverb or a scripture? Is there something you go to when you need that little pick-me-up, right? Athletes have the smelling salts. Is there something that Paul Meyer goes to kind of give them a little boost?
Well, I wish I could say I was disciplined enough to go to this often, but, Paul had a thorn in the flesh, the Apostle Paul. And in 2 Corinthians 12:9, he said, despite battling with this thorn in the flesh, we don't know what it was, but we know it was recurring. And then we know it was his Achilles heel, so to speak. But he says in 2 Corinthians 12:9, but God said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I'll boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power can rest in me. And if we want Christ's power, that is the recipe. We serve a God who has set up a inside out, upside down kingdom. And we don't get it because it confounds our earthly understanding and our own wisdom. It's counterintuitive, but God uses the weak things to shame the strong. He uses the poor to shame the rich. It's just the kind of God he is. And so I would say my smelling salt would be that verse is just remember that God, he can work with weakness. In fact, that's what he works best with, because when we're weak, he gets all the glory and he deserves it. So, man, I just hope, if anything, my life, I hope will grow in being characterized by a reliance upon God's grace in my weakness. And so that someone will look at me and say, man, Paul, he's weak, but at least he serves a strong God. And that strong God has got him through some tough spots. And I don't know about Paul, man, the God he worships, the God he serves is a mighty.
That's fantastic. Paul, thank you so much for being on with us today. Thank you for sharing your stories, your testimony, all the stuff. Man, great stuff. Great stuff, Paul. Thank you so much again.
Truly my pleasure. Anytime I can have an opportunity to talk about what God's done for me, it's forever changed my life. And so I can't help but just praise him and thank him for how good he's been to me. So it's my pleasure, and thanks for having me on and spending time with me.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for sharing.
My pleasure.
Man, so much to take out of that. Did not know that was going to turn into such a faith-filled talk. So in the beginning, right, finds out he's another one of these rich dad guys. One of the key mentors in his relationship with his granddad. How cool is that? Working the W-2, built that runway over just over a decade, right? Picking up rental properties. So when he really does jump out, he's ready to go. He's already been there, done that, got the t-shirt. But man, I love how he met really his second mentor. He was looking, right? Somebody was carrying more rich dad stuff. And he basically was like, hey, I want to be around this guy. And he dedicated basically 2 years of his life working for free just to pick this guy's brain. A lot of people want coaching. A lot of people need mentorship, but people who just want to take and not really give anything, that's not what they're looking for. He gave for 2 years freely, right, of his family, his wife, etc. After his W-2 job, like he poured into it. by attending and helping and do this stuff. And that's kind of sometimes what you need to do. It's not just the, hey, can I buy you a beer? Can I buy you some coffee? It's, hey, sometimes you need to give something to get wisdom back. So I thought that was a great job of what he did there. Board of advisors, love it. Something that I'm actively putting together now for my own business. But there's 3 things that he brings to his board. He brings his financials, he brings his personnel, and he brings his strategic direction. So I love that he has this, and that he does about 90 to 95% of what their insights he puts together and actually puts it into motion. So love it. Crazy forging story about having a heart surgery in his 30s. Not to mention one, but then twice. Oh, I can't even imagine going through just all the mental torment and pain and all that of those surgery and then having to do it again. But I love it, man. Lead and serve, and basically just giving God the time and space to kind of show you. I love it, man. Let God reveal himself. Paul, great advice, great words. I also like your going back to the Apostle Paul, the thorn in the side. Hey, sometimes your strength is in your weakness. That's where the power is. So, guys, continue to be open and honest and telling the real stuff, because that's what brings us all together. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, vendors, for supporting us. So, guys, till next time, have a good one.